All right, let's just jump right in with a question that, well, it might just keep you up tonight. We're not talking about particles or complex equations here, but something way, way stranger. And the question is this: where exactly are you?
No, seriously, think about it for a second. Your body, it's made of something like 7 octillion atoms. That's a 7 with, 27 zeros after it? It's just a mind-boggling number. And we can account for every single one of those atoms. But where, in all that physical stuff, is the you that's actually experiencing the world, the one listening to my voice right now?
And that question leads us right into our first big idea here, which is this concept of the ghost in the atoms. We're going to explore this really bizarre disconnect between the physical matter that makes you up and your inner, subjective world.
Go on, I'm serious, just pinch yourself. You feel that, right? Of course you do. There's an experience happening. And, we can trace the whole physical chain of events, the pressure on your skin, the nerve signals firing off, the activity lighting up in your brain. We can point to every single atom involved in that process. But can you point to the feeling, to the actual awareness of the pinch? Nope, you can't. It doesn't seem to have a physical location at all.
And that little experiment, that simple fact that you can't point to the feeling, well, that's not just some philosophical party trick. It's actually one of the deepest, most profound mysteries in all of science. And it's got a name: the hard problem of consciousness.
So to really get our heads around the hard problem, there's a key word we need to know: qualia. It sounds fancy, but it's simple. Qualia are just the raw, subjective qualities of an experience. Think about it. When you look at a red apple, the light hitting your eye is just a wavelength of photons. The neurons firing in your brain, they're not red. So where does the actual experience of redness come from? That subjective feeling. That is qualia.
And this is where things get really interesting. See, neuroscientists, they're getting amazing at solving what they call the easy problems. I mean, they're not easy, but they're solvable. Things like mapping how the brain processes information or how it controls your arm. But the hard problem, that's a whole different beast. It asks the ultimate question: why? Why is all that processing accompanied by an inner experience at all? Why isn't it all just a bunch of complex machinery running in the dark with nobody home to actually feel anything?
This analogy really hits the nail on the head. Imagine you ask me how a car moves, and I just say, the engine does it. Well, I haven't really explained anything, have I? I need to tell you about the pistons, the combustion, the crankshaft, the mechanism. Saying the brain creates consciousness is pretty much the same thing. It just points to the black box where the magic happens. It doesn't explain the how, and it definitely doesn't explain the why.
Okay, but believe it or not, it gets even weirder. Because when we start to look closer at the brain itself, that simple, intuitive idea of a single, unified you starts to fall apart. First, just consider the scale. Your brain has about 86 billion neurons. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the same number of stars in our entire Milky Way galaxy. An entire galaxy of cells right inside your head.
And it gets crazier. Those neurons make something like 100 times trillion connections. If you tried to count them one every single second, it would take you over 3 million years. The sheer complexity is just staggering to think about.
But here's the puzzle that arises from all that complexity. When you just look at an apple, right? A simple apple. Your brain doesn't see it as one thing. The part that processes its color is over here. The part that processes its shape is over there. Its location, its motion. It's all handled in different, separate places.
So the question becomes, how does your brain take all these scattered, separate signals and somehow bind them all together into one single, unified experience of an apple? This is what's known as the binding problem. And to be honest with you, nobody really has a good answer.
And if you thought that was strange, hang on. There's a rare surgery for severe epilepsy where doctors actually sever the corpus callosum, the main connection between the brain's two hemispheres. And the most astonishing thing is, after the surgery, these split-brain patients seem almost completely normal.
But when you do clever experiments, something really bizarre emerges. You find that the left hand, which is controlled by the right side of the brain, can know things that the speaking, conscious left brain has no clue about. It's wild, and it raises this deeply unsettling question. Is there one consciousness in that skull, or are there two separate consciousnesses, sharing a single body, totally unaware of each other? The fact that our sense of a single self can be fractured like that, it opens up a whole new can of worms about what you even are.
So let's push this idea of personal identity to the limit with a classic thought experiment, the teleporter.
Imagine this machine scans your body on Earth, atom for atom. It sends that information to Mars, where it reassembles a perfect copy of you. But here's the catch. To avoid having two of you, the machine on Earth destroys your original body.
So the person who wakes up on Mars, they have all your memories, all your feelings, all your thoughts. To them, it feels like they just blinked and they were on Mars. But is that person you? Did your consciousness travel? Or did you die on Earth and you've just been replaced by a perfect clone who only thinks they're you? This whole paradox forces us to ask what you really are. Are you a continuous stream of awareness or just a pattern of information that can be copied and pasted?
So, okay, if our most basic intuitions about having a single, continuous self are this fragile, where are scientists even looking for the source of consciousness?
Well, there are a couple of big ideas floating around. One theory suggests that consciousness isn't in the neurons themselves, but in the brain's overall electromagnetic field. That might solve that binding problem we talked about. But the obvious question is, why isn't a simple magnet conscious? It has an EM field. Then you've got another wild idea from the world of quantum mechanics, suggesting consciousness comes from quantum effects happening deep inside our neurons. The problem there, most physicists will tell you the brain is way too warm and wet for those delicate quantum states to survive. And you know what? Even if these theories were right, they still don't explain the fundamental feeling of being aware.
Since we seem to keep hitting a brick wall with these biological and physical explanations, maybe, just maybe, we need to zoom out. Maybe we need to reframe the entire question on a much grander, more cosmic scale.
I want you to just let this thought sink in for a second. You are a collection of atoms that has become aware that it's a collection of atoms. You are a piece of the universe that has woken up and is now contemplating the rest of it. In a very real sense, you are the universe's way of thinking about itself.
And that leads to this really radical idea. What if we've had it backwards this whole time? What if the brain doesn't create consciousness any more than a TV creates the show you're watching? What if consciousness is a fundamental property of reality itself, just like mass or spin or electrical charge? And maybe our complex brains are just incredibly sophisticated receivers that are tuned to that universal consciousness.
And when you think about it this way, your own cosmic heritage is just incredible. The very atoms that make up your brain, at this very moment, they were born in the Big Bang. They were forged in the fiery hearts of dying stars billions and billions of years ago. They traveled across the unimaginable emptiness of space to come together for one brief, fleeting moment to become you. And now, those ancient atoms are asking questions about what they are and where they came from.
So just think about what that means. Your own personal, private, inner experience, your consciousness, might not be some random neurological fluke. It might be the very mechanism through which the entire universe becomes aware of itself.
Look, we don't have the final answer. Nobody does. And that leaves us with the biggest question of all. Is your mind just an incredibly complex computation running on biological hardware? Is it a ghost in the machine? Or is it something far more profound, something woven into the very fabric of reality itself? So, after all that, what do you think?